Friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Films. My name is Alan, and I'm happy to be back and alive after a pretty crazy adventure I just went on with American Ben in Vietnam. During my trip, I took many airplane flights and finally had time to catch up on a bunch of movies I've wanted to watch. As you probably all know, I love sci-fi films, which is why in today's episode I'll be talking about 5 2017 sci-fi films you might not have heard of and should definitely check out. Every year I watch dozens of sci-fi movies, and many of them end up being B-movies and other lackluster genre films that fill a certain craving I have at the moment. The truth is, a lot of sci-fi movies, while entertaining, are terrible movies from a filmmaker's point of view. So when a movie like Blade Runner 2049 comes out, it's a delight to watch. The new Blade Runner is one of those rare sequel films that does justice and in some ways even surpasses the original. The film carries on the Blade Runner tradition of strong visual and musical cues along with its methodical pacing from a time when movies took a larger chunk of the average household's entertainment budget. It's a heavily atmospheric film that portrays a very bleak yet visually pleasing version of our future, in which our planet is covered in heavy layers of smog and poverty. In this futuristic world, humans and their bioengineered slaves, known as replicants, are living in constant turmoil. Blade Runner 2049 once again asks us, what makes a human human? Can something created by man, an artificial intelligence or bioengineered slave, also have that spark? Despite receiving positive reviews by both critics and viewers alike, Blade Runner 2049 was a box office failure. It depended on a marketing campaign that assumed that audiences were fans of the original. Blade Runner 2049 was created with a mindset very different from those of more profit-driven franchises like Transformers, the Marvel superhero movies, and the Fast and Furious movies. It was a well-thought-out and developed sequel to an IP almost 40 years after the original came out. The central themes and visions are still intact and not significantly changed for more mainstream audiences. At 163 minutes long, it allowed director Denis Villeneuve to tell the story to its completion without any last-minute post-production cuts to meet the moviegoers' ever-shortening attention spans. It was a movie, in all fairness, that probably shouldn't have been made the way it was made, which is also why it's such a terrific movie. Every now and then you go to a movie theater with just the intention to watch a movie, any movie. Your choices are limited by what's playing at the time and you just make the best out of the situation, which is why I found myself walking into the theater to watch Downsizing. Now if you didn't know already, I really dislike Matt Damon. There's something undeniably wrong with the man. Now, I completely agree that he is a very talented actor, but whenever I see him in a movie, I immediately lose my immersion into the film. I can admit it, I have a very irrational and biased view of the man, which is why I was really surprised that I absolutely loved Downsizing, including Matt Damon's role in the film. Maybe it was because he was finally playing a role that truly fit him. Downsizing is about a version of our world where scientists have figured out how to make humans extremely tiny. The process, which is called downsizing, is seen as a solution to overpopulation and all the problems that come along with it. Better yet, by going through this process, an individual's wealth all of a sudden increases to a ridiculous amount, giving individuals with financial problems a new start in life. And that's what this film is all about. Matt Damon plays an unhappy middle-aged man who has given up on his dreams after an illness in his family pulls him out of college. Upon being downsized, he is thrown into a new world unattached to his previous one and finds new challenges and adventures in his pursuit of happiness. The beauty of this film is that all the problems the characters in the film face are extremely relatable. And more than once while watching the movie, I thought to myself, what if I could downsize myself? Imagine all the problems I could solve. But in the end, the audience and Matt Damon learned that downsizing is just a superficial change to one's life. In order to find real meaning and happiness, well, you kind of just have to watch the movie. Rounding out the excellent cast are Christoph Waltz, who is hilariously good, and Hong Chau, who hits hard with her performance as a one-legged Vietnamese refugee/political dissident. Next on our list is another very talented actress that I don't like, Anne Hathaway. Part of the reason I don't like her is because I find her a bit over the top. The other reason is that she went to the same high school as me a few years earlier than I did, and now she's much more successful and talented than I am. Anyway, Hathaway stars in the peculiar film Colossal along with Jason Sudeikis, who is at his least funniest. Colossal, like many other films on this list, is an interesting blend of genres, but this one almost actively chooses the most unlikely pairing of them all. It's almost as if the director accepted a challenge from a 10-year-old to create a monster movie that's framed like a black romantic comedy. Now, while that sounds like a terrible idea, and in many ways it is a terrible idea, Colossal is just so unexpected and interesting one can't help but watch it to its fruition. Having said that, if you're going into this movie expecting a monster film, you will be disappointed. But if you're looking for something different and are a bit bored of all the stereotypical genre films, you might be pleasantly surprised. Critics hated Bright, audiences love Bright, and I completely understand why. Bright is a confusing mess of a story. There are so many things that David Ayer attempts to do that just aren't done well, or to completion. Will Smith once again plays a character that seems true to his career's current state, downtrodden, in limbo, and depressed. Joel Edgerton plays a more likable version of basically Ethan Hawke in every movie, but as an orc. This film basically has the story of Training Day, also written by Ayers, or End of the Watch, but features the cast of Lord of the Rings, or better yet, Shadowrun. It's a really wacky and gritty film and, in my opinion, an awesome combination of genres that can only be seen in the very darkest corners of the internet and the comic book store. Some people won't get it, and I'm sure a lot of critics who wrote negative reviews never heard of this urban fantasy genre. Bright is a magical, albeit flawed, introduction of this genre to the mainstream. And if I may be so bold to say, it's escapism at its best. Instead of looking at the traditional battle lines drawn between poor minorities and white cops in LA, we have a purely fantastic world of orcs and elves killing each other. Is it kind of a disrespectful and crude comparison? Sure, but isn't that the point of art, and more importantly satire, to poke fun at our reality? Or have things really changed a lot in the last 5 years? In the end, Bright is a fun mishmash of genres carried out by a serviceable, stereotypical cop movie plot. Going in, if you think you'll enjoy this film, you most likely will. Lastly, we look at the film Okja, created by the talented Korean director Jun Ho-bong, also known by American audiences from his movie Snowpiercer. Okja is the story and the name of a bioengineered super pig and the little girl who raised her. An epic adventure ensues when the Monsanto-like company who created the pig comes to take said pig from the little girl without her permission. If you look past the very tired and cliche stories about the evils of the meat industry and the very hysterical and over-the-top evil business owners and equally over-the-top pro-animal eco-terrorists, you find a beautiful coming-to-age story of a young girl that wouldn't be so out of place in a Miyazaki feature film. It's this young girl's singular-driven pursuit to find her super pig that gels together this otherwise crazy and fantastic film. What appears on the surface as a children's story is surprisingly deep and dark. It's a commentary about what happens when the complexities and evils of the modern world encounter pure innocence and humanity. Or something like that. So there you have it, 5 sci-fi movies from 2017 that I think you shouldn't miss. Now let me know in the comment section below if you have any other awesome movies to add to this list, or what you think about the movies on this list. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Alan, reminding you that life is a movie and you are the protagonist.